Hello and welcome to Motorsport Radio. This is the Superbike Show. My name is Lester. Thank you very much for listening. We are live this Tuesday evening, and we've got the usual panel, usual suspects of reprobates. Jay King. Hello, Jay. I don't know why I called you.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks away now, so I wouldn't call myself regular at the moment. But yeah, it's good to be back. Loads and loads to speak about in today's show.
Yeah, and we've got the our usual senior Scottish correspondent, Lewis Ray, who'll be filling us in on all of the dramas that he got up to at Knockhill at the weekend. And also joining us shortly is Michael Hill, the World Superbike show, Paddock Show Co-ordinator and host as well. And later in the show, we'll be looking back on some of the tributes that have poured in over the weekend since Friday to the sad, untimely death of the legend of British motor racing, Paul Bird. So we'll be getting tributes in for him. If you've got any particular stories about your experiences with him, or you just had a nice moment with him, or you just wanted to share some nice words about him, then you can do so on the comments box below. So despite everything, it has been a pretty busy week of news. We're speaking just ahead of the resumption of the World Superbike round. It's at France this weekend. And, well, we thought we'd invite on, this was a pre-planned before the weekend, to get him, I suppose, a returning champion, really, Michael Hill, for the Superbike show co-ordinator and presenter as well, and everybody who has been to Donington rounds will have seen and heard him. Maybe even if you were at Formula One at Monza at the weekend, you might have seen and heard Michael. So good to have you back on the show, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. A little bit tired. I didn't realise that the Formula One weekend in Monza was going to be quite as busy as it was. It was my first experience actually working with Ferrari and working with Shell, so it was something a little bit different, but something that I've always wanted to do, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's good to be back on, and I know we've tried a couple of times in the last year or so to make it work with diaries and things, but I'm as you've already said, I'm pretty busy, so apologies for not being able to get back on earlier than now, but I'm delighted to be back, and yeah, looking forward to chatting to you guys tonight.
Well, we coincidentally timed this to perfection to have you on this show, because we were anticipating that Jonathan Ray, I think we were one of the first English websites, news outlets to put the story out there. We got it off Speed Week, so in case we got it wrong, it was them. But we were one of the Motorsport Radio, to my knowledge anyway, one of the first sites to actually go live with the story. And well, yeah, he didn't deny anything at the time. He just sort of said in room that, you know, these are all just rumours, but he never said it was a load of rubbish. So that kind of just added a bit more fuel to the fire. And well, now this week, it's all been confirmed. Jonathan Ray has made a seismic shift, really, in World Superbikes, Michael. Is this one of the biggest rider moves in World Superbikes history?
I think of the modern era, yes, definitely. I think a lot of people were maybe shocked when Toprak left and he initially went from Kawasaki across to Yamaha. I think that was a bit of a shock that nobody expected, me included. I thought that somewhere along the line he would maybe end up alongside Jonathan at Kawasaki. That didn't work. I think obviously the bombshell of Toprak moving to BMW was a surprise for a lot of people as well. But I think that, yeah, I mean, the fact that the six-time world champ, he's been with Kawasaki for 9 years, look at what they've achieved. You know, I mean, record upon record that they have got. What a legacy in green, and he's going to go in a new direction. I have to say, I kind of had a feeling that he was going to leave. Obviously, in the role that I've got, you do get to hear a lot from journalists, and obviously you get quite friendly with a lot of riders and things as well. So you hear a lot of things. Some of it you just take with a pinch of salt, and then.
So what did you hear specifically then? What sort of tipped you off?
I kind of was under the impression that he was getting frustrated in terms of maybe not being able to perform at the level that he felt that he could still perform at. You know, not that he specifically said anything negative about the team or the bike, but I think it was very clear in the early rounds that the bike wasn't as competitive as it had been in recent years, and obviously the match of Alvaro with the Ducati, it's a perfect match, you know. I'm sure we'll talk about Alvaro and his dominance with Ducati at some point tonight as well, and so I'll save my thoughts on that until we get to that. But you know, I got to be honest, when the rumors and the journalists did start talking a lot about him leaving, I honestly thought he was going to go to Ducati. That's where I honestly thought he would go. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, like with any contract, yes, he'd signed a contract. I don't know the context of the contract that he had with Kawasaki.
Well, we don't actually know who he was talking to, so that could have been an option, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't think the door was open at Honda. I know he's been with Honda before. I just didn't see that as a fit of him going back there. I didn't see BMW. I think the fact that they'd already made their choice and they'd gone with Toprak, it, to me, just didn't make sense. And even there now with BMW, there's not enough seats for the riders that they already have contracted, right? So I'm sure we're going to see another game of musical chairs moving along pretty soon. But I honestly thought out of the sort of the teams and the manufacturers that were left, I honestly thought that he was going to go to Ducati. I had previously said to Alvaro, hey, what about Jonathan next year? And, you know, Alvaro was kind of smiling about it. And, you know, again, he's like, he didn't really care who was his teammate, you know? So I think my feeling was that if he was going to leave, and again, it wasn't sure that he was, I thought he would go in red. But again, I work in Moto America a little bit as well. There was conversations of potential riders moving around over there. And then I don't know, the more and more they were talking, I thought it's either just smoke and mirrors and he's going to stay, and it's just a way of trying to leverage and push Kawasaki to change things, or he will go to Yamaha. So until the news came out, we got to know the news, obviously, before it's under embargo, but it comes out obviously after I knew it was going to happen. I wasn't surprised, given the situation. He's only won one race this year, you know, so I think he wants a new challenge. Sometimes I think you need a new challenge in life, and you know, I wish him all the best. I'm sure there's a million people wanting to ask him a ton of questions, right? Including all of us here, and I'm sure he's not allowed to talk about it until after Jerez. So, you know, he'll have his reasons. I think from what we can see that's been released, both from Kawasaki's side and also from Jonathan's side, is that there's still a big affection between them. I think it's been done quite amicably. And again, I don't think we'll ever know what was in the contract or the actual initial driving force as to why he made that decision to leave. I think what it does do, though, is it just, I'm sure Lewis and Jamie and you'll agree, it gives us something really, really exciting, as if it wasn't exciting enough. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I've worked in World Superbike for more than a decade. You know, I already think it's a fantastic championship, even when Jonathan was dominating. And I think there's storylines around the paddock all over. But I think what it now gives us is something that we haven't had, as you said in the intro, for a long time. I mean, these moves from these riders are big, big moves. And it's putting a spotlight back onto Superbike. And I think we're going to be in for a great season next year.
Yeah, I think we keep saying it almost every year. We set for, you know, a new classic. A lot of people of a certain age, when they think about classic or the best era of World Superbikes, their minds automatically go back to the 90s, understandably so. But for those people like Lewis who weren't around in the 90s, this is the new 90s, I suppose, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, like I grew up. I mean, I was at the very first race as a kid. You can blame my dad for the reason that I'm as passionate as I am. You know, I took along to Donington, 1988. Got to meet Fred Merkel, Joey Dunlop, Roger Burnett. You know, all those guys. And for me, one of the things that hooked me as a kid, that, you know, growing up, I hated bikes. I was scared. I was quite a wimpy kid, really. You know, my dad and my mum had bikes, and, you know, we're riding around. They actually met through racing, and that's the reason I'm called Michael, is I'm named after Mike Halewood. So my family has a big affiliation and a big love of motorcycle racing. So, you know, it was a bit of a shock to mum and dad when I was like, okay, I'll go to the races. And, you know, I remember being at Donington and watching it, and was just absolutely hooked. The fact that even as a small kid, just walking around holding my dad's hand, you could walk into the paddock, you know, getting picked up and sat on the Ruby Honda of Fred Merkel. And it's like, to me, that was just something I'd never experienced. So I think it's, you know, growing up and then seeing Fogarty and all those kind of eras, and Corsa, and then Haga coming in, and then obviously Aprilia coming in, and then Honda developed all these other bikes from the RC30 to the RC45s, and then Petronas randomly turned up with a bike, and then Gobert won on a bimotor, and so many stories. I mean, I could talk about it for years and hours, you know, but especially for someone like Lewis, I mean, you're a youngster. You don't recognise or remember some of these early battles. So I mean, for you, it's all a bit new. But I mean, I think we've seen some great races. We've seen some great champions. We've seen some great rider moves in the past. I mean, when Fogarty moved from Ducati to Honda, that was a big move back in the day, wasn't it? When he moved across to the Castrol Honda team, and he didn't win the title with Honda. He won some races, but I think what we've now got is we don't just have one big name moving. We have several big names moving. We've also got several big names right now that their future is unclear. Scott Redding, where does he go? There was meant to be an announcement that he was going to stay or leave BMW. We were told it was coming in Imola. It didn't happen. I have my own personal view in terms of what I think he will do. And I'm not sure I can say it, but I mean, I don't want to.
Well, you can say it. He might not like you saying it, but you are allowed.
I honestly thought he was going to stay at BMW, and I still think he'll stay at BMW. Why the delay is, I don't know. But I think he'll stay at BMW. I think the big question now is with Toprak going to BMW. I think they buy up their own admission have not had the season that they expected. I think they're a little bit behind the curveball, but they are making steps. Same can be said with Honda. If I was Honda right now, I'd be kind of thinking, well, we've got two solid riders. I remember when Iker and Xavi were first announced, and there were various people making various comments. But let's not forget that both of these riders have been on the podium. They've been strong riders. They've achieved as much as what Alvaro and Leon Haslam achieved on the bike, with a lot less experience on a Superbike and Pirelli tires. So if you were Honda, if you were Leon Camier, would you be looking to change your riders? Probably not. But now you've got other riders that are available, and that's not to say that Iker and Xavi aren't doing a good job, but they're available. There's now a seat at Kawasaki. There was a seat at Yamaha, that's gone. Andre Iannone's name is being thrown in the mix. 1 minute Morbidelli is going to go to a Ducati team. Now he might not be, so he could be coming back to Superbike. Bassani has been screaming for a factory opportunity. I just don't think this game of musical chairs is finished, and I bloody love it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic.
It is. It gives us something a bit of extra stuff to talk about, which, we all love a good bit of gossip, I have to say. But, Lewis, as if there wasn't already enough news stories surrounding World Superbikes, the inevitable has happened, and, Iannone has announced a return, hasn't he?
Yeah, Andrea Iannone will be returning to professional motorcycle racing next season as well on a Ducati with the team. We don't know just yet, but it sounds like it's going to be Go 11 Ducati that he'll be with next season. So, yeah, somewhat controversial to some fans with him making his return. Obviously, such a long period out of last professional time on a bike, and it was 2019.
Are you saying he's past it now? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
I wasn't going to say anything, but Michael, you're here tonight. Iannone next season in World Superbike. I'm going to put all the pressure on you for this one. Do you think
I could see where that was coming? I could see where that was shaping. I could just see by the smile on your face. I was like, oh, here we go. This is it. It's going to be. You know what? I mean, I've met Andrea a number of times. I've been fortunate enough to interview him when he was in MotoGP, and obviously the work that he's done and support with Two Wheels for Life, of which I'm an ambassador for. So he's an interesting character. Will he be still quick? I don't know. Should he be given a second chance? I don't know. It's above my pay grade, isn't it? I mean, I have my own personal view. I'm a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to certain things, and whatever somebody does in their own home or whatever is entirely up to them. I think the whole saga and everything, we don't need to talk about what happened. We know that there was a banned substance that he was proven to have taken, and that's what got him banned, and he tried to fight it. And again, as you said, there'll be people on both sides of the fence that will agree with him, and some people will not agree with him. And the reality is he did take the banned substance. It's kind of there was an announcement, wasn't there, a couple of weeks ago during the Manx Grand Prix, where it was announced that a rider had taken the banned substance, and this was a Class A substance, which we know Andre Iannone didn't take a Class A substance. It was a banned substance that he'd taken that was on the anti-doping list. So, but for me, like I said, I'm old school. I think motorcycle racing is dangerous enough. I've sadly been witness to a number of riders over the year that have been killed at events that I've been at. I've had to write eulogies and speak about riders that I've worked with personally. And I don't know. I just think if you're stupid enough to, certainly if you start talking about Class A banned substances, then I think if you're going to do that, I don't think there's a place on the grid for you. Even if that's just my personal opinion, and I'm sure some people will say, but he served his time. And like I said, he's not banned for that, but I don't know. What do you think? What do you think?
Passing it back over. Well, to be honest, I don't know how I feel necessarily about him returning and getting such a big seat and taking a seat off, what looks to be Philip O'Toole at the end of the season. But yeah, I think on one hand, it's going to be probably a draw to some fans. It's another name which a lot of the motorcycle community knows, but is it necessarily for the right reasons is a whole nother question. And if I had to say overall opinion, I'm not necessarily too pleased that he's taken a seat of a highly competitive grid where we have loads of World Supersport riders, like we've seen with Nicola Bulliga getting the step up. There's plenty of other World Supersport riders that could get the call up and potentially even perform on the bike, like we've seen with Dominic Agata this season. He's been able to get even a pole position and some good results, consistent results throughout the season. So I think there's better riders and riders that maybe not necessarily deserve it more, but deserve the opportunity to prove themselves more at the moment that could take that seat in the World Superbikes, which is a championship which is becoming fuller and fuller by the second. And it's not just little names that's getting taken by at the moment. So if you're just a World Supersport rider that's struggling to make it by almost, but you're highly talented, you're getting good results, but just because, for example, Iannone is making a return, he has maybe a bit of money behind him, then you're not able to get a seat. That's the part I initially don't agree with.
Well,
sorry, can I just come back on that? So, because I like these kind of debates. You're going to regret bringing me on now. This is the point. I normally get paid by the word.
You might regret it, depending on what you say next.
No. I always like to look at both sides of the argument, and I think you make a valid point. Absolutely, that there are young up-and-coming riders, of which we're British. There are British riders that deserve the seat, as much as there are other riders around the world in domestic championships that I feel would also deserve the seat. But let's, and I'm saying it, like I said, from a banned substance point of view, I don't think it's a good role model. That's my personal belief, and I'd say the same if you see an athlete, a tennis player, whatever. It's not just because it's Andrea Iannone. That's just my own personal belief. But let's flip the coin. What if Andrea Iannone was telling the truth? Right? What if the meal that he consumed was tarnished or contaminated by no fault of his own? Right? What if he was telling the truth? Then arguably he does deserve a second chance, right?
Yeah.
And you could also argue, at his day, at his time in MotoGP, he was one of the most exciting, naturally talented riders to watch, in my opinion. Did he make some mistakes? I always remember Argentina when he wiped out.
If that hadn't happened, he probably would have got that ride instead of Dovi, because they were kind of arguing who was going to get it at the time.
Exactly. So I think, like I said, there's always two sides to every story, and that's why I tend on Twitter not to get involved in these back and forwards, because everyone's got an opinion and everyone's entitled to an opinion. And like I said, I have my opinion in terms of banned substances. That's globally, not even just in motorsport. That's just my feeling on it. I don't smoke. I don't really drink. That's just me as an individual. But I think certainly in the sport that we're involved with, if you're doing something and you've purposely done it, then you're cheating and you shouldn't be in the sport. But I see the same as that when it comes to not just that, even when you have teams and you get an engine. Let's say the engine is oversized, or someone changes a head gasket, and there was a situation in America a couple of years ago where a particular rider was cheating, and they just lose the points for one event. And I'm like, was that the engine that they used for the whole season? Yes. Well, ban them for the whole season and kick them out. Why are they even here?
Mike.
That's why I don't run a racing series, because nobody left on the grid. You know what I mean? But it's like, but I think it takes, you get sort of young riders or up and coming riders, or that are doing it like father and son kind of situation, or father and daughter, and they're starting out and they're putting everything into going racing. Somebody cheats in one way or another, whether that's a sporting side of things or a technical side of things. And that also, for me, is robbing someone of a place on the grid. So again, I'm quite old-fashioned on stuff like that. I mean, I like racing. I understand that everyone's going to push the boundaries, but I think the rules need to be enforced, and I think it needs to be consistently enforced. And yeah, that's where I sit. That's where I sit on it.
I think maybe perhaps the conversation in general on Iannone tends to get a bit on the negative side of things. We are all presuming that he will do the full season, that he won't fall out with the team, perform badly and get fired, or some other sort of combination, which means he'll not be with that team. Therefore, someone else could take the place, rightfully so, potentially depending on your view of that. So, just because he's been announced somewhere, and we think it is Go 11, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be in that team for the full season.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, again, look at it the other way. What if he comes back? I mean, look at when Melandri came back, and everybody said Melandri would do nothing, and he rode the Aruba thing, and he won the first race. Was it 2018? I think it was, from memory, and he won it on the line. One of the greatest wins that he's ever won. Okay, the wheels fell apart after that, and he finished 9th or 10th in the next round, and he had an up and down season. But hey, Andrea Iannone can ride a motorcycle. We've all seen him ride a motorcycle. There's no reason that he couldn't commit. I think it's going to be hard, as you said, Lewis. I mean, it's a stacked grid now. World Superbike is so competitive, and coming in on a Ducati, and going head to head with Alvaro, it's going to be a hard ask, isn't it? But what if he comes back and wins the first race? Then we'll be having a completely different conversation in the middle of the season, won't we?
Because he was always good at Phillip Island as well.
Yeah, so I don't know. And I, again, like coming back to the Philip Oertel thing, there's a young rider that, finished 3rd and 4th in the World Supersport Championship, was given an opportunity, moved up. He's had some flashes of brilliance, Philip. He's been in the top 6. He's regularly been in the top 10. But we're talking of, look how many riders on that grid this year alone have won world championships, even down to Remy Gardner. He's a Moto2 world champion. Go even into Supersport. John McPhee is a multiple-time, 10-time Moto3 race winner. Right throughout the whole field, it's stacked grids. And as you said, there's not enough seats for the number of riders that want places. Fabio Di Gianantonio, where's he going? Looks like his MotoGP career is finished. He was linked to come to Superbike. Now nobody's talking about him anymore. So where does he go? I don't know. I just think we're in a good place. And I think, how cool is it, the fact that you've got, all the riders on the grid potentially have won. I think I did the statistic. I have to correct myself. But I think every single rider that was entered in the World Supersport Championship had won an FIM sanctioned race, except one. Every single rider on the grid. I mean, you wouldn't have said that back in, like you were saying earlier, Lester, about the 1980s, when you had 40 odd riders on the grid. Some of those riders were 6, 7, 8 seconds off the pace. I mean, we're talking about, we talk about John McPhee, let's talk about, young Scottish rider that's moved across into Supersport, and he's having a hard time to adjust, not because he's slow and he can't ride a motorbike. The level is so high, and he's got to learn how to ride a bigger bike with different tires and a different way of racing. You can't just write him off and go, oh, he's done half a season and he's only performing in the rain. It's like, have you seen him ride? Like, I've stood at the track. I've been there and watched him. He's riding that thing as hard as anybody's riding. And we're talking about he's qualifying 14th, but he's 1.3 seconds off pole. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? I think we're just in a completely different position than where we were 10, 15 years ago in World Superbike, World Supersport 300. And I think it's great. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a lot of, like you say, a lot of story threads to consider, especially at this moment in time. We're always keeping an eye out for what, with a British bias, obviously, and a British and Irish bias, understandably. Brad Ray and Tara McKenzie, we know do we know exactly, is Brad Ray definitely doing, what is anything like with all the rider things?
Next season we want.
Yeah, just remind me where we're up to with Brad Ray. What's exactly he's doing next year?
Yeah, well, nothing's been announced. I understand that he has got an option to stay with Yamaha. If you were Yamaha and looking at what he's done this year, you would have to say he deserves another shot. I think the ride that he put in Imola in race 2 was phenomenal. It kind of went under the radar a lot by the international broadcasters. But I mean, to finish P6 in Imola, a track he'd never been to before, with a team that had never been in the top 6 in its career, so he missed the last couple of rounds because of obviously going to have surgery on his wrist and stuff, but I think he deserves a shot. I believe he still will be on the grid, and I would assume he would stay with the same team, or maybe go to GMT 94. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what Baldassari is going to do, whether he gets another opportunity. And again, we talk about Agata moving up. I think, Lewis, you mentioned it earlier about Dominic Agata moving into Superbike and making that transition. Let's not forget Lorenzo Baldassari. He was second in the World Championship, but he's just taking a little bit longer to adjust. And I think one thing that, I think, again, you can't mandate it, you can't make it happen, but I think to say to a rider that's moving into a new championship, right, if you don't perform in the first year, you're out, I think that's harsh. I think that's really harsh. I mean, look at Remy Gardner. He wins the World Championship, goes to KTM, and I know the pressure's there, and I know they're always looking at the next Marc Marquez that's going to come through, but midway through a season to be told, sorry, mate, you're not performing. It's like, dude, I just won the World Championship for you 6 months ago. I think, I don't know. For me, that's just, it's harsh. It's really harsh.
Is that the level where we're at now, though, with so much tough competition, so many great riders, potentially great riders? It's kind of, I mean, a lot is said a similar sort of thing with football managers in football. Mm-hmm. If you've got literally a few games, and if for whatever reason the boss doesn't like you as a football manager, your team's lost, similar kind of thing really, because you're working together as a team. It's not necessarily anyone. I mean, ultimately it's kind of the rider's fault whether they win or lose, but together it is a team effort really. We see it quite a lot in other sports. You've given like literally just a few races or a few rounds, and if you're not performing and you don't look like you're going to be, you might as well just. But every team's got a different philosophy, haven't they? So,
but I think you've got to compare apples with apples, and this is again you set me off now. I'm going to go into one of my rants, but it's like it frustrates me is when people always compare different championships. You can't compare Moto America with BSB. It's different rules. It's different tires. You're comparing apples with bananas. It's like when everybody said last year about Jake Gagne coming across and doing a wild card in Portimao. I know Jake Gagne. I've known him for 5 or 6 years. The guy is immensely talented. But what did you actually expect him to do with his American spec bike, even though you get a little upgrade that he's never tested, with tyres that he's never raced on since he was replacing Nicky Hayden, at a track he hasn't ridden on for a couple of years, when racing in America is completely different? It's the same when you get BSB riders turning up and they do wildcards. It's not like it was back in the day when Hislop could turn up on a Monster Bob Ducati and wipe the floor with everybody, or John Reynolds could, or Michael Rutter on a V&M Honda in the rain at Brands Hatch put it on the podium. It's not like that anymore, and it's, you're comparing apples with bananas. It's completely crazy. So I think, taking Baldassari, has Baldassari been given the same opportunity, the same technical specs, the same testing opportunities as Dominic Agata? I honestly don't know. I don't know what's underneath the fairing, It's a Yamaha, but is it the same spec? How much testing did he do? Agata had already ridden in Suzuka on a Superbike with Honda. He had Superbike experience. So again, even just that alone, you're comparing apples with bananas. So I don't know. Again, it's one of those ones where I just think to go half a season and then just to boot somebody out, I just think it's harsh. I'm just a bit of a softie, Lester. What can I say?
It's tough. It's tough at the top, isn't it? It's... well, the big decisions have to be made, I think is what politicians like to say.
But I think so. And then to come back to your point very quickly about Tyrone McKenzie, my understanding is that he has a 2-year contract with the Petronas Honda team. I was involved with the launch of the team in Australia and Portugal earlier in the season, and my understanding is he has a 2-year contract. Whether that's him staying in Supersport for 2 years or whether he has an opportunity to move up, I know he's done some testing. Don't know. So, my answer would be I would expect Bradley Ray to stay in Superbike, and I would say it's fully deserved. And if he stays with the same team, I don't see that as a negative. He's already proved with that team at a track he's never been to that he can put it in the top 6, and he's only going to get faster, isn't he? He's only going to get more used to racing with the guys week in, week out. So from that point of view, it is where I stand with Brad Ray. And with Taron, he's got a two-year contract. I think what he's doing with the Honda in Supersport is pretty phenomenal. And again, I know Midori Moriwaki really well. I know what they're trying to do with that team. They've drafted in a whole new technical team. Mick Shanley's now working there, so they've brought people in. But again, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's coming back to that point of how long do you give it before you boot somebody out? It's the same with Honda. They're coming back into a championship. They hadn't won races for 6-7 years or even been on the podium for that long. It's a brand new bike. There's balancing rules now, so it just takes time. So I think that the Honda will get quicker, undoubtedly. And I think it'll be interesting to see just how quick it gets as they continue to develop the engines. And also whether Taran wants to stay in Supersport. I don't know. It's not a question that I've asked him on the stage at all. I mean, obviously in Most, we spent most of the time whooping and celebrating and high-fiving the fact that he just won a race.
He did himself the world of good doing that, I think.
We never really talked about anything else, But how good was that, actually? Just coming back to that, I mean, just to see the emotion in the face. It's been hard for Taran, hasn't it? When you especially look back in his BSB the last year there, and obviously Lewis and Jamie, you probably know him more than me in BSB. I've not actually been trackside in BSB as much in recent years because of my job obviously overseas, but the injuries he's had after winning the championship and coming back from injuries, and you could just see what it meant to him and also to the team. I mean, it was great.
Yeah, it was a good news story, wasn't it, Jay? It was definitely good.
We felt very sorry. Every show we talk about how sorry we felt for him, that he's worked so hard and he's on such a slow bike. And we were really so happy for him because you could tell it was starting to get at him through the season, all the hard work he's putting in, and he's just finishing at the back every race. But it was so nice just all right, it was a bit of a lucky win, but he had to be brave to stay out there in those conditions.
Yeah, 100% a win is a win, right? I mean, you've got to get it across the line. And I thought he
decided to stay out there. I think his team said, if you come in, we're not changing your tyres anyway. So he had to stay out there, and it was a brilliant win.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And I'm interested to see, obviously, we got France coming up in fact, I'm flying out on Thursday morning. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how the Honda goes there. Because again, there's some fast corners, but the Honda's very agile. It turns well, it works well. I was just actually looking at the forecast. I was thinking, we might get another wet race. We might see McPhee and Mackenzie fighting for the podium. But it's going to be 32 degrees every day. So it's looking like we're in a bit of a heat wave, which might have a different effect. But we'll see. We'll see.
Any other questions, Jay?
How do you think Sam's going to get on? We've totally missed that. How Sam's going to get on with the all-new Ducati team that's coming to World Superbikes?
Well, firstly, I'm glad that Sam's coming here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to have seen him stay in Moto2 and get that title. I think he's come so close on so many occasions to winning the title, and for one reason or another, it's all just slipped through his fingers. But I think it's great that Sam's going to come back to the championship. I think the fact that we're going to have two brothers racing in Superbike again, it's going to be a bit like when they started out on the old 125s, isn't it? When I was on track with them years ago. So I think that's going to be good fun. One thing I will say is that the Mark VDS team, they don't do things by halves.
No, they're going to put a lot of money into that.
Yeah, I mean, you see what they do in Moto2. You see what they've done previously when they went into MotoGP. Mark van der Straten runs a very, very tight ship. I've already had conversations with some of the existing team in Moto2 just asking about, what's expected of the rider. Paddock Show wanting to know what's going on, and we've seen new teams come into the championship where it's normally Christmas is out of the way before they're asking questions like that, so they're taking it very seriously. My understanding is that they're going to get the same spec bike as any of the other Ducati customer teams, which again is one of the beauties, I think, of World Superbike. If you come in and you have the money and you say, I want the same spec bike, same suspension, same everything that Alvaro's got, you pay for it, you get it, which I think is great. So I think the question is going to be with Sam is just not whether he can ride the bike, because I think the Panigale, I think, is quite a forgiving bike. And I think when you look at some of the riders that have jumped on the Ducati straight away, they've gone relatively quickly. Hasn't taken them as long to adapt necessarily as it would be jumping on a Kawasaki, for example, or jumping on the Honda. So I think Sam will be competitive. But as Lewis has already said, I mean, this is a stacked grid. He's going to come in against people that have a lot of Superbike experience. Last time he raced Supersport was obviously back, 2012, 2013. It's a decade ago. He spent, 10 years in Grand Prix. I guess the only thing he's got in his favour is that he will know pretty much all of the tracks. He won't know Most in the Czech Republic, but I mean, he's not stupid. He's such a talent. He'll be able to learn fast, and I would expect him to be quick. I'm sure one of the questions you're going to ask me, so I'll just preempt it, is you're going to ask me, can he win? What can he do? So I think
it'll be tough.
It's going to be tough, honestly. And I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm good friends with Sam, so I'm not saying that I don't think he's capable. But I think, to come in on the same bike as Alvaro and to beat Alvaro is going to be hard. Alvaro is going to, whether he continues and wins the championship this next year, which is what it looks like he's going to do, whether you can beat Alvaro on the same bike, I don't know. I think you're going to have next year 5 or 6 guys, in my opinion. As I said, there'll be a couple of other announcements coming, and I think when they all get announced, I think people will be agreeing. I hope they would agree with me that we're going to have 5 or 6 riders, I think, that'll fight for the championship next year. And I think Sam's target would be to finish on the podium as many times as he can.
Yeah.
And beat Iannone.
Well, that should be certainly good to watch, definitely. So, Michael, you yourself, you're very busy. For those who don't know, you commentating and involved in Moto America, as you've already said as well, and you're travelling around the world to World Superbike events, being the Paddock Show Co-ordinator and presenter and host as well, and occasional MotoGP rounds here and there, and some dabbling in Formula One races, as you were at Monza at the weekend, rubbing shoulders with world champions and stuff. It's all very, very glamorous and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's good to see that you're at least keeping extremely busy. One of the most busiest people in any paddocks. Seemingly, and there is only one of you, right? Because you seem to just be
please, the world could, seriously, my mum always jokes about this. She's like, the world could, she actually wanted to have 4 boys, and she said, after you, we're glad that we just had 1, and I was like 2 before my sister was born, so God knows what I was like as a child. But no, I mean, I don't think the world's not ready for 2 of me, like, for sure. But no, I mean, but for sure. I said it before Lewis did, because I'm sure he's going to get some dig in there at some point, so no, I mean, I genuinely, I say this on the stage in World Superbike, I have the best job in the world. I love motorcycle racing, all forms of motorsport, but particularly motorcycle racing. I grew up with it. It's been a passion since I was a kid. It's something that I think I needed as a kid to give me like a reason. It's going to sound really cliched and a bit kind of, I don't know what the word is, but I think I kind of needed something like motorcycles and the sport and the environment that it is to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow, I guess. Not that I was a bad kid, but I think it was, when I was younger, I think, as all kids growing up, you go through certain stuff. And I think I just needed something to give me a focus and to just bring me back to reality, and I've been super fortunate that I was given an opportunity to go into World Superbike as a teenager, probably similar age to Lewis, and was made to feel super welcome, was given the opportunity to push the boundaries. I always remember speaking to Heather Watson, who was the press officer at the time for Ducati, and I think it was at Portimao, or it might have been actually at Monza as well, actually, but certainly at Monza, I remember her telling me to go away and not come back for the rest of the weekend because I was just annoying her, because I just wanted to do an interview with one of the riders. And I think, the fact that, I was a complete pain in the ass as a teenager, because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I moved away from a really good job in banking technology to pursue a career as a presenter, and was given a 1-year opportunity to try it, and it worked out, so I've been super fortunate. I've met some amazing people, and like you said, it's opened up doors. I mean, being asked by Wayne Rainey to go and be the voice of their TV show is, Wayne Rainey is my idol. He's such a cool guy. So for me, it's kind of I'm not really starstruck that often, but with Wayne, that was kind of like shit. Like, he saw me on stage at World Superbike, and then Moto America had this idea that they wanted to do an online TV broadcast show, and they picked me, and it's like, wow, like it's surreal, and obviously with Dorna and MotoGP, I've been fortunate to obviously work in some MotoGPs. I still do 3 or 4 a year. I'll be out in Qatar again, and again, just through hard work and persistence, and I've got the opportunity now to do a little bit in Formula One. So I was at Monza, which was very different. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit unsure going into that weekend, like what it was like. And I've watched
cars. What are these?
Yeah, it's like 4 wheels, like really. But no, I mean, it was great. And again, there, like it was. I think we spoke a little bit before we started the show that I was very fortunate there to meet some drivers and got to interview some absolute legends. I was working with Ferrari, and again, it was a very different role to what I do in, commentary. So it was very different commentating a Formula One race and specifically working with guests of a team. But, like you mentioned, Max Verstappen, my perception watching just on TV was just like, man, meeting this guy is going to be hard work, and it was not like that at all. He was the coolest, nicest chap, spent some time asking me about superbikes and, it was just like we're talking now. And it's just like, wow, it was actually, so it kind of changed my perception a little bit. It wasn't as kind of egotistical as I thought it was going to be. And it was friendly and, it was nice, very different, it's a different kind of weekend and, but that was kind of cool. And yeah, I don't know. It's life is good, right? Life is what you make of it though, isn't it? You know what I mean? Obviously Lewis, Jamie as well, you're involved in racing and sports and, is this the job that I thought I would be doing? No, never in a million years. I went to drama school and thought I'd be doing, always wanted to be a foreign correspondent. So in my head, that's what I wanted to do.
You sort of are, really, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of in a different way, and still putting the old vocal training to use when we do the crazy things at Donington. But it's not what I expected to do. I didn't expect that 95% of my friends would be in every corner of the globe, and it's not what I thought my life would be. But I wouldn't change it in a heartbeat. If someone said that this all stops tomorrow, I would be devastated. Yeah, absolutely. It's the greatest sport in the world for me.
Well, you've got one new fan this season, at least, with young Max Johnson, a mini moto rider at Fab Racing. Apparently, he was on the stage with you at Donington this year, and you were talking about his merchandise. Apparently,
yes, I remember. Yeah, he's a great kid. Great
is,
kid.
Yeah, and that's just a little comment coming in from his mum, Jessica.
Oh, that's really nice. Tell him I said hi and look forward to seeing him on a bigger bike in a couple of years.
Yeah, well, he'll be racing this weekend and we'll be covering it on Motorsport Radio, and Lewis will be commentating on it, doing his best Michael Hill impression. And
oh no, don't do that. Don't just stick to yourself, mate. Don't impersonate me. It's all downhill if you do that. But actually, I was going to ask Lewis that. Obviously how old are you now? Actually, by the way, you're still a teenager, right?
Yes, 17 at the moment.
Yeah, come on, that's the age that I was making a nuisance of myself. How are you finding it? Obviously you guys are talking to me and that's all great, but let's hear from the young one. He sat there trying to give me all the hard questions. You see how I deflected it back though very quickly. That's years of practice. but no, seriously though, Lewis, obviously I follow you on Instagram and that as well, and obviously watch a little bit of the Fab Racing, and you're doing a great job. You obviously must love it.
Yeah, I love it as well. It's one of the, as you said, it's a sport that I've grown up with all my life, whether it be cars or bikes. Motorsport's always been in my life. So yeah, it's great. It's great to be around the paddock. It's great to have that type of atmosphere. But actually, one thing that I did want to ask you about anyway, going back to World Superbike and actually some of the Moto America stuff. So obviously you're involved in World Superbike and Moto America mainly throughout the season. They're probably your two main championships. And I believe your final round of Moto America was at Pittsburgh, the last round. And obviously, Moto America, it's a championship that's grown massively over the past couple of seasons, and now we have riders, like we've seen with Cameron Beaubier, coming back from Moto2 to Moto America, now of course injured after the Pittsburgh round. People as well, like Cameron Peterson, he's also away injured at the moment. But looking at the Moto America paddock, the Americans, to be honest, it's not like it was in the 90s where we have loads of Americans in Grand Prix and fighting at the world stage. Now there's not many, there's a handful really, and now we've seen Sean Dillon Kelly as well. He's not going to be with the American racing team for the rest of the season. So looking at the Moto America paddock at the moment, like you mentioned of Jake Garnier at Portimao last season, obviously didn't get the results maybe some people were expecting from a Moto America champion, but as you said, he's on a bike and on a circuit which he's not used to. So looking at that paddock, who do you think is able or has the talent to be able to make it to either World Superbike or the Grand Prix stage at the moment, whether even that be people like Kayla Yakov and Gus Rodeo that's coming through the ranks in America at the moment? So who do you think really, in your eyes, has the talent to make it to the top?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of questions in one. But I think what I will say is that Moto America is definitely growing in terms of its appeal to American fans. I think also the appeal that it has through the show that I do with Roger Hayden online and with Greg Cremo, we broadcast live 8 hours a day. So I think the fact that it's now accessible globally, I think is helping them. They have some big sponsors in terms of industry players that are very much involved in the championship. So I think from a championship perspective, it's growing. I've been involved in the series since the end of 2018, and it's the amount of fans even that we get at the track. Sure, it's not at the same level as BSB or World Superbike, but it's growing, and there are 3 or 4 events during the year, Laguna Seca being one of them, Pittsburgh being another, where you really can't move in the paddock. It's busy, So I think that's good, and I think that bodes well for the future. I think, coming back to your point about Jake Gagne, a lot of people expected him to come straight over and challenge again with Garrett Gerloff. I personally didn't, not because I don't think he's got the talent, but like I said earlier, you've got to compare apples with apples. And I think if you were to give Jake Gagne the full testing program pre-season, that I think he could do quite a good job. I think he could fight in the top 6. Whether he could fight for the championship, I guess now maybe we'll never know. He's looks like he's going to stay in America again and obviously make a name for himself there as a 3-time champion as well. Could Beaubier come back into Superbike? I actually got asked this on a Moto America podcast a couple of weeks ago, where they said if Beaubier had actually gone to Superbike, do you think it would have been easier? And I think yes, I think it would have been easier because he'd spent his whole life on Supersport and Superbikes, right? But he would have still hit the same challenge that he had, with the top guy still being the top guy. So I think in Superbike, it's hard in terms of looking down for young talent, just purely not because there isn't young talent, but it's like you can't go, you mentioned Kelly Yakov, she's not going to jump, or Gus Rodeo, they're not going to jump off a Junior Cup bike onto a Twins Cup bike and then move the following year straight into a Superbike and be instantly quick. They need to be given time. And I think one thing that I have seen by being in Moto America is that there's a really clear stepping stone in terms of how they structure their categories. And again, Superbike putting to one side, but if you look at the rules throughout all of the other classes, they're exactly the same as the rules in BSB. So the Supersport rules are the next generation rules, which are being used in most domestic championships. So one of the biggest things that I think Moto America has done, which I think is a good thing, is they've actually tried to align their championships with global championships and of course the World Championship, which would make it easier for a rider that's been at the sharp end in a Supersport class, for example, to make the transition to World Supersport, because the bikes at least would be the same. So if you move, let's say Rocco Landers moved on from a Yamaha and he suddenly came across and raced with Tenkate on a Yamaha, the bike is in essence the same bike. It's going to handle the same, it's going to feel the same, the brakes are going to be the same, the power is going to be the same. So I think that's a good thing. Obviously in Superbike, it's hard to say because they run different tires. And you can see that even in World Superbike, when Honda go to the Suzuka 8 Hours, for example, they're running on a different tire and they're untouchable. So the bikes work differently with different tires. That's just the way that it is, right? So I think maybe they would look in the future at changing tires. But every single class that they have there is on the Dunlop tires, not on the Pirelli or the Michelin or the Bridgestone. So I think that's where it's difficult, I think, to see who could make the transition. From a talent point of view, certainly the names that you've mentioned. I don't know if you've seen the press release. Actually, Kelly Yakov has just signed to ride Supersport for the last 2 races with the Titleist Kawasaki team. So Stefano Mesa is going to replace Cameron Beaubier because he's going to sit out the rest of the season. So Kelly Yakov, kind of just disproving what I've just said, that you're not going to go from Junior Cup into Twins Cup and then cut short the season and move into Supersport. But I don't think that she's going to jump on a Supersport bike and be banging bars with Xavi Forés. That's not to say that I don't think she'll be competitive. I think she will be competitive. I think there's every reason that she can fight for points and maybe in the top 10. But it's a massive step to go to that level. Xavi Forés won 8 races on the bounce. He's a very, very underrated rider, in my opinion. And it's going to be tough to beat him and the likes of Josh Hayes, who's 48 years old now, and he's still winning races. So I think for me, they need to keep investing in the younger riders. They have like a Motul Mini Cup now, so they have like this mini GP, which is kind of mirroring a little bit like what the Fab Racing does in a way. It's quite similar in terms of the way that they've structured it. But America's a big place, and I never realized just how big America was and just how much some of these teams are spending just in gas alone. I mean, I was speaking to a family, their son races on a Kawasaki 400, and they were at Barber Motorsports Park, which is in Alabama. They live in Colorado, And we just got chatting as I was leaving in the car park one night to go back to the hotel, and I was saying, he did good today. He was in the top 10, and just out of curiosity, how much is it costing you to go racing? And they told me this figure, and I was like, is he just riding Junior Cup? Like that's crazy. I was like, you can race in the Supersport 300 World Championship for that kind of money if you do the conversion into euro. I was like, what the hell are you spending the money on? Like, I don't understand why it's so expensive. And then his father actually broke down the cost. It cost them $1,800 just in fuel to get to the event. I'm flying backwards and forwards, and I'm not even spending $1,000 on flights. So they're doubling or tripling what I'm spending on an airfare to do an 18-hour drive in a truck. And again, you've probably seen on the Live Plus show over there, or the pictures that you'll see from Moto America, they're not turning up in trucks like we have here with PBM or with Cinetec. It's not like that. These are huge, big haulers. It's sometimes taking them to go from one track to the next 36, 37 hours. So you start putting in some of these bigger trucks and the cost alone, and I think that's one of the things which you're never going to get around, are you? Because America's just so big. But I think there is talent. I think Gus Rodeo for sure has shown talent. There's lots of young riders coming through in Junior Cup and Twins Cup. Jackson Blackman springs to mind. Joe Lamandri Jr. springs to mind. They're actually, they're good kids. I think they need to understand a little bit in terms of how Europe works. So I think to answer your question in a slightly different way, it's not so much why don't we see so many American riders, it's why don't we see so many American riders actually wanting to make the journey, right? Because I think that, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in particular, but there have been American riders that have come across in the last 4 or 5 years, and they have not adapted to life in Europe, or they've answered questions or been portrayed in the media or on TV or whatever in a way where, a European or a British sponsor would shake their head and go, yeah, we don't want you, and I think that's no criticism of anybody in particular. I say the same when I watch some interviews with British riders, and again, not mentioning names, and I'm like, man, just be quiet, just don't speak, just say thank you to the team, and that's all you need to say. You don't need to say anything else, but again, I'm seeing it from a very different perspective than I did 10, 12 years ago, right? When I'm looking at it now from a marketing and commercial point of view, I work with young riders in the Blue Crew Championship, in the Supersport 300s, and to a lesser degree in World Supersport, some of the young riders. And there's a protocol. They're schooled, they're told or advised, not necessarily told, they're advised how to conduct themselves, what they should say, where they need to be at what time. So I think it's very different in Europe. Even coming from BSB, you could speak to BSB riders that make the jump into the World Championship. I'm sure if you spoke to Bradley Ray or to Taron McKenzie or even John McPhee, they'd be like, hey, this is not anything like we actually thought it was going to be like. It's very, very different. And I think that for me is the biggest challenge that the American riders face. Not the fact of whether they can ride or whether they've got talent, because for sure they have talent. It's whether they can adapt to the European life.
And, well, go back over to the World Superbike paddock. I'm going to put you on the spot completely here, like earlier on with the Iannone question. We spoke briefly about, obviously, Toprak also moving next season to BMW. And, well, a pretty straightforward question. Do you think it's a good decision moving from the Pata Yamaha team, Paul Denn's team, to the factory BMW squad, which we've seen struggle for the past 2 seasons, even with Scott Redd and an injured Michael van der Mark?
Okay, so let me spin it back the other way. When he moved from Kawasaki to Yamaha, did you think it was a good decision? Because 95% of the people that I spoke to said it was the worst decision he ever made, and 2 years later he was a world champion. So my answer to that would be, I think Toprak will win races next year. And I also think that anybody else on a BMW has the chance to win races next year. If BMW do what they've publicly said they are going to do, there's no reason that they can't win races. And whoever's alongside him, there's no reason that they can't win races. So yeah, do I think he can win first weekend like he did when he went to Yamaha, and obviously like Alex Lowe's did when he went to Kawasaki? I'll put my neck on it. I'll say he can be on the podium. I think he'll be on the podium in the first race of the season.
Fair enough. Well, There you go. Does that answer your question then, Lewis?
Yeah, that was I wasn't actually expecting that, to be honest, because whenever it was first initially announced, we, of course, did an article on it for Motorsport Radio, and overall the reaction was very negative. And actually, speaking on the Superbike show as well,
overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, it was very negative from the public as well. And well, we didn't necessarily think that he was going to have the best transition from the bike, but I think. Well, do you think actually that it's going to be necessarily Top Rack that's going to be making the difference, or maybe BMW that are going to make the huge step which they've promised? Do you think it's possible to make such a big step from the bike that they have this season, which seems to just be struggling apart from at certain racetracks in certain conditions? We've seen in the past that BMW, it's been better, for example, in the wet conditions, and it's been able to perform and get podiums there. But do you think that it's going to be necessarily the riders that are going to still have to compromise next season, or do you think it's going to be BMW which will definitely make the step up and give a top bike like we've seen Ducati do for the past couple of seasons, and even Yamaha do?
I think, and again, this is not me trying to be political or dodge the question. I think that if you look at where BMW was 4 or 5 years ago and look at where they are now, they've made a step. And I think you can say the same with Honda. If you look back at the last races, go into FP1, FP2, qualifying, look at the lap times that Lecuona and those guys are doing on the Honda. They're faster than what Alvaro was on the Honda. So they have made a step. BMW has made a step. The reality is they just haven't made a big enough step, you know. So I think it's a bit of a disservice to say that that Scott, that Van der Mark, that Loris Baz, that Gerloff haven't made a difference, that they haven't actually taken that bike to a new level, because they have. I think it's wrong to say that if Toprak gets on the bike and wins, everybody else is terrible, because I just don't believe that. I just don't believe that at all. Not when you see what those riders have done. You know, let's not forget Loris Baz has won races and been on podiums. So Gerloff hasn't won a race, but he's been on the podium. You know, he's still relatively young in his Superbike career. Redding has been second and third in the World Championship, albeit with a different bike. You don't forget how to ride a motorcycle. You don't lose talent just because you jump on a different bike. You know, so I think that BMW will make a step. And I think that all the riders, Toprak included, will fight for the podium next year.
Very interesting to see predictions now versus maybe after round one next year, and who's going to do what. And
if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say I'm wrong. You know, but I'm just looking forward to seeing it all unravel. You know, because again, you can ask the same question with Jonathan. Is Jonathan going to get onto that Yamaha and perform as well? Let's not forget, the only Yamaha rider to win races in the last couple of years is Toprak. That's no disrespect to Locatelli, because he's a phenomenal rider, right? So arguably, Toprak is going to BMW, where there's always pressure, but nobody's won on the BMW, right? So it's kind of, you know, you haven't really got anything to lose, mate. Like, if you win, you win. And if you don't, you can blame the bike, right? Not that he would, but I'm kind of being a bit broad there, right?
Well, Scott Redding does.
Well, yes, Scott does. But on the Yamaha, for example, with Jonathan, we've seen Toprak take the fight to Alvaro on the Ducati with the current rules. So it's an expectation that once Jonathan gets his head around the Yamaha, that he's going to be there fighting for victories, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have moved from Kawasaki. There would be no other motivation for him to move if he didn't think that he could win races. So I think, like I said at the beginning, I honestly believe we're going to see 5 or 6 guys fighting for the championship.
Well, Darren Andrews has been on. Good evening, Darren. Thanks for tuning in. Darren says Toprak won't be anywhere near a podium. Ooh, Darren.
Let's see at Donington Park whether he has or he hasn't then.
Exactly. So
maybe I'm just wishful thinking, because I like leaving a weekend with no voice left when I've been going absolutely crazy over a race. So maybe I'm just wishful thinking that we are going to have like a fight, you know?
I mean, ultimately, I'm one of them sort of like kind of like boring, neutral kind of fans who like, I don't really have a major, other than the, you know, British and maybe Irish riders. I just want to see a good race. I don't really care who wins. You know, I'm not a big overall fan of anyone. If we just see good racing, good, hard, fast, close, you know, racing, bring it on. And let's see how the championship develops. Final question. We don't want to keep you too long because, well, you've got like a million things to do.
I've got to go and iron my underpants and socks. Absolutely. I'm a busy man.
Exactly. So any final questions, Jay?
Yes. Quick last one. I don't know if you've seen, but British Superbike recently have changed their classes. They've got rid of the 300s and the stock 600s. Could you see World Superbikes following suit and getting rid of the 300s? Because I don't know about you, but some races in those 300s, I've had to put my hands over my eyes because it can get a bit dangerous. Could you see World Superbikes go into the bigger twins, maybe like BSB have?
That's a good question. I mean, I commentate on the Twins Cup in Moto America, and for me, it's one of the best races of the weekend. Both, I'm sure if you had Roger Hayden on and you spoke to him, he would agree. It's great racing. My only question or my only query would be, if they did go down that route, is where the line would be drawn. So, for example, in Moto America, it's gone from being a kind of a feeder class now to being a bit of a superbike class. So it's full open rules. So you've gone from having bikes that initially had 70 or 80 horsepower to now having well over 100. So again, it comes down to who's got the biggest pocket in a lot of the cases. Not all the time, but for generally speaking, the guys at the front, the Gus Rodeos, the Rocco Landers, the Jackson Blackmans, the Hayden Schultzes in Moto America, they're the guys that are spending the money on the engines and all the parts. So I don't know whether it's moving away from what it was designed to be. I mean, racing is always innovation, isn't it? And I get that, and I'm not against that. But, it's the same when you look at MotoGP and where they've gone with all of their aerodynamics. I think they've gone too far, So my query or my concern would be what the rules would be. I know that next year there is going to be a Women's World Championship, and my understanding is that those machines will be a twins machine. It hasn't been announced which manufacturer, but looking around, you would say it's going to be Yamaha or Aprilia, because they seem to be the two leading manufacturers. Okay, Suzuki still make one, but there's no other Suzuki representation anywhere really in Europe at a factory level or a factory support. So I think there will be a series next year for the Women's World Cup. That's already been announced, with the bike to be determined. So I think that will come into play. Will they move away from 300s? I mean, if they do, what do they replace it with? They've changed the age limit, and you've got to be, I think, 16 now to race in the 300s. But then to get onto anything bigger, you've got to be 18. So if they do move away from that, what happens to the 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds that are superior to everybody else on the grid? There's nowhere for them to go. So they win a Supersport 300 World Championship, but they're not old enough to progress to something else. And I don't know if you go from a 300 Supersport into a Twins Cup bike. I've spoke to riders in America where they say jumping from the Twins Cup bike onto a Supersport bike, for example, the transition is actually quite difficult. You're going from a twin to a 4-cylinder. I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. It's a tricky one. I don't know. I mean, for me, I always loved the stock 600s. I mean, that for me is still the perfect class, isn't it? You can still have your little entry level class like the super teens, I think they're calling it now, with all the Kawasaki. So you have your one make series, you get the youngsters in there. It's policed correctly, a bit like the Yamaha Blue Crew Championship that we have in the World Championship. Everyone's on the same bike. Now it's down to the rider. Totally love that. I'm all for that because it can be policed and it can be run well. Then if you move up, you could have gone into the stock 600s and you could have still raced the stock 600. You can restrict them. Look at what we've got now with all the technology. You could restrict the stock 600 to a 75, 80 horsepower bike if you wanted to. But it's a bigger bike. It's still a 4-cylinder. It's still got the characteristics of the super sport bike. And look, we see the likes of Augusto Fernandez. He came through that. Morbidelli came through that. These guys, Michael Ruben Rinaldi came through that championship. So it did work. I don't know if you go a twins route, whether that's going to produce the top right. I don't know. Honestly, it's a good question. I don't know.
It's hard because at the end of the day, those 600s are no longer in the showroom, so that they have to match it up with what people are buying on the street.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess if you're going to make a stock championship and everyone's running a 765 triple Triumph, or everyone's now running the 800 MV or the V-twin Panigale, that's cost again, isn't it? To go to the showroom and buy one of them. So it's where's the line? So I don't know. I don't think it would be a bad idea. I just think it just comes back to like what I said at the beginning. And I'm kind of with you a little bit, Lester, as well. Like, we just want to see good racing. Of course, I'm more friendly with some riders than others. That's a given, right? But when I'm commentating, when I'm doing interviews, I'm completely impartial. And when I'm watching a race, I just want to see a good race. I don't care who elbows who in the face at the final corner. You know what I mean? I just want to see proper hard racing and let the best man or woman win. But I think it's hard when you start throwing into the mix some of these sort of technological kind of decisions that we have now. It's the same when I know this is the last question and I'm waffling on, but it's the same when we talk about penalties, isn't it? If it's not black and white, then there's a human involved, and when there's a human involved, you're going to get the impartiality. Whether people say it doesn't happen or not, that's absolute rubbish. It does, because that's just human nature, right? So, you see it all the time. He's touched the green, he's done this sensor, or he didn't that, and you blatantly see a picture, but it didn't trigger the sensor. And I'm like, guys, come on. It's got to be black and white, but it's never going to be black and white if you've got a human involved, right? The same way that if you get someone thinks, well, maybe if we just put this base gasket on and we just raise the compression a little bit, and nobody will check it, and then you get away with it for 7 races, and then you get checked, and then, oh dear, you were cheating for the whole season. I don't know. I think I don't know. You've opened a can of worms now. I'm not going to be able to attack properly now. I'm going to be sat here thinking about it for the next 2 days. But I think it's a good question, and I think there needs to be something. I think what I will say is that I think the step from the 300 into the Supersport as it is now is a way bigger step than it was when Supersport was the old conventional Supersport. I think next generation, as you said, these are 800cc motorcycles. Top speed of the V-twin at some of these races is in excess of 170 miles an hour. I was at Daytona this year for that event, and Josh Herron was doing 184 mile an hour on a Supersport bike. Yeah. And it wasn't so many years ago that we didn't really get Superbikes doing that, So I think for a little 16, 17-year-old, racer to go from, 50 horsepower, 54 horsepower if you're lucky on a little 400. I don't know what the dyno figures would be, but I would assume it's around that. You're jumping onto something that's got more than double, more weight, more speed. For me, I just think it's an accident waiting to happen, and I think we need to do our best to keep the sport as safe as we can. So I think it's a bit of a step. So maybe twins is the answer. I don't know.
Well, like most things, we will just have to wait and see. And in BSB's case, anyway, all the right decisions have been made for all the right choices. And we're not saying anything different. And I'm not just go on.
I was going to say, just before I do go, I know you're probably going to talk a little bit after I've gone about Paul Bird and the legacy of Paul Bird. I would just like to also extend my condolences to his family. I know obviously his son and daughter quite well, and obviously the family as well. And I think what a legacy Paul leaves behind. From those early days with what he achieved with John McGuinness in the old 250s and various, and especially I remember him coming to the fore with Hizzy, as I said, on that Monster Mob bike when he demolished that record at Donington in World Superbikes. So I think it's a massive loss. I did have the pleasure of meeting him a few times, and he was always an absolute gent. Anytime that I'd spoken to him, he said it as it was, and a lot of people don't like that, but you always knew what you were going to get with Paul, and I think that's something that you can't always say with a lot of people. If he had something to say, he would say it, wouldn't he? And what a big hole he's going to leave in not just I think in BSB, but I think in motorsport in general. So I just would like to say that before I go.
Yeah, definitely. We as well just extend our thoughts and love to his nearest and dearest. And like we've already said, he's not just a motorcycle racing icon and massive figure, but just a motorsport all round. A colourful character. Sadly, no longer with us, and we've got a lot of great stories left, if nothing else. Paul Bird and the family, we're all definitely thinking of you guys at the moment. So, Michael, thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time. We don't want to keep you too long because, you've got a lot of work to get. Final word, though, for young aspiring riders all over the world in all the various paddocks that you go to, because you do a lot of media and press coverage and somewhat sort of mentoring roles and managerial type of things, a bit of everything. If anyone is looking for any particular sort of services from Michael Hill Promotions, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can get in touch with me on social media. So I'm on Instagram and on Twitter at mhillofficial. I have a website as well, michaelhillpromotions.com. And again, I guess a final word that I would say is kind of on the T-shirt here. Just follow your dreams. Like, just literally, and never let anybody tell you that you can't. Because if I'd have listened to 5 or 6 people that told me that I would never make it in this sport and I didn't know what I was doing, I would have never continued being a pain in the backside like I was all those years ago. So I would say, especially, and also like, with the likes of young lad there like Lewis, what a breath of fresh air it is to see somebody with such a passion coming through and doing such a good job. So you have to be careful though. He's actually quite good. I'm getting a bit worried. I might lose my job in a couple of years. I've still got a good 10 years in me yet, Lewis. Just don't take my job just yet.
Well, we kind of do have a unfortunate history, depending on what side of the whether you're already working at Dorna, of having people working at Dorna. I was
going to say you're kind of you're helping them along the way, which is that. You know, I'm going to say as well. Again, I'm waffling on again, but I've got to say you also should be commended for that, Lester, because I think it's not easy to do what you've done, and I think a lot of the knowledge and the experience that you've passed on, and I know even when I was just starting out, even though we never worked together specifically, listening and obviously taking on board some of the things that you've done, and I think you have been a massive help and a massive inspiration to a lot of people, some of whom I work with now, as you said, in the World Championship. So I think you should also take a bit of a bow there and take a bit of a pat on the back for what you've done for the sport as well.
I don't know what I do. I just tell people what I know, whether they'd like to hear it or not.
But hey, you know what?
Some of the time they don't.
Sometimes that's all that people need, though, mate. Sometimes that's all they need.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, fair enough. That is anyway. Michael, have a great weekend this weekend. I'm sure you will anyway. And we'd love to get you back on maybe at the end of the season or maybe over the winter or something, just to see how the rider landscape might have changed in the meantime. So it'll be
and maybe we'll have had that first. Yeah, maybe we'll have had that first Superbike test, and I might need to readjust my predictions. We'll see.
Yeah, or maybe we'll have a bet on something at the start of the season. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to.
Thank you for coming on, Michael. Always a pleasure, and have fun this weekend, and good luck with it all.
Thank you very much, and thanks Jamie and Lewis as well. I had a lot of fun chatting to you guys. Keep in touch, and I'll be listening to the show while I'm packing my underpants.
That's a nice thought. And on that note, thank you very much, Michael. This is the Superbike Show. It is Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Lewis is here, and Jay King as well. And as we were just mentioning a short while ago, we're just, amongst other things, talking about all the action that went on over the weekend, and it's about to come on. We're also remembering Paul Bird as well, a massive figure in British motor racing as well as British motorcycle racing. And if you have any nice stories, any memories of your interactions with Paul, or a lot of people come forward over the weekend and said just what an amazing, nice, generous person he was, whether it's riders, and so many riders coming forward saying that they were given their first chance by Paul. Paul took a punt on them, and there's loads of anecdotes and stories. We're not going to go through absolutely all of them because I'm sure you would have done a lot of that already online. And there's been so many anyway. And a comment, as I was reading out earlier, regarding Max Johnson. Jessica's been on, and she added to that and said that she was devastated to hear, as a lot of people were, the sad news of Paul Bird's passing. He really was one of a kind. So many stories and BSB memories. The favourites being that the time she lost Max Johnson and Faith at Donington, she says, I looked across at Paul Bird Motorsport Hospitality, and there they were, chugging cans of Coke and sweets, dancing on the tables. When Max very first met him, Paul Bird, and saw you in the pub later that evening, you went across to Paul Bird, introduced himself Lewis Hamilton-esque. This was 6 years old, Max Johnson. And he says, "Hi, Birdie, I'm Max Johnson, age 6. Remember me? I'm going to be racing for you one day." Oh, and
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, Max Johnson, for those who don't know, he's an upcoming young British racer racing in mini motos at Fab Racing on the road to MotoGP. And Paul Bird did, as we say, give a chance to so many young riders and some old riders as well. And Joey Dunlop won his final TT, sadly before he died, a couple of weeks before he died, with Paul Bird as well. A memory that I'd forgotten about until I was going through YouTube and stuff. But memories of Paul Bird, who just stunned the entire motor racing industry over the weekend. Jay, any thoughts from you regarding Paul Bird?
Yeah, I have got a bit of Paul Bird memorabilia actually in my dad's shed. Back very long time ago, when literally Metra Kits just started with Fab, Scott Reddin actually rode for Paul Bird then, and actually came back around when he did ride for him again in BSB all those years later and won the title. But he had all of his Metra Kit in Paul Bird colours. It was Monster Mob colours back then. It was the same as Steve Hislop's bike. And the next year, obviously, Scott sold that bike and went to move on. I think he went on to race in Spain. But my brother, the next year, we got Scott Reddin's old Metra Kit, and it was all still in the Monster Mob colours. My dad never got rid of those fairings. He put new fairings on with our own colours, but we still have those Monster Mob fairings in Scott Reddin's 45 still in the shed. So my plan one day was to take them to a World Superbike meeting and get Scott to sign them, and I will still try and do it. We have still got some Paul Bird Monster Mob Metra Kit fairings in our shed at home.
Nice. Lewis, I'm sure you, like a lot of people, would have gone through over the weekend and read so many, an avalanche, an overwhelming amount of tributes from various riders and various figures in motor racing, and it's almost too many to sort of pick out and highlight, really. This evening, I think, just a couple of hours before we came in here, Michael Laverty also added his tributes to and memories of Paul Bird as well. But for you, do you have any memories or highlights of things that you particularly remember about Paul Bird?
Well, like you said, there's been plenty of memories put up and plenty of stories about Paul Bird, and there's nothing too much really that hasn't already been said. He's done so much for motorsport as well, and actually, as you mentioned, Michael Laverty's post that he put up talking about Paul Bird, and actually one of the takeouts from that anyway, and excerpts, I guess you could say, was the fact, obviously, he raced briefly, had a team in MotoGP using the CRT class, which was basically designed and helped save the championship during a brief period to get more teams on the grid. And, actually, I remember, just a couple hours ago, Michael Laverty's post saying that their chassis, their frame was actually better than the factory Aprilia at the time, and that is the real dedication that he had for the sport, as well as Shaky Byrne, which probably one of the most iconic lines, I guess you could say, it's going to stick in my head for a long, long time, is that Shaky Byrne basically said that Paul Bird needed the paddock as much as the paddock needed Paul Bird, and that's probably the perfect way to end it. I mean, he's done so much for the sport in his time, whether that be in rallying and superbikes and MotoGP, even in GTs with, of course, his son racing GTs at the moment as well. He's done so much for the sport. He just loved motorbike racing, he loved motorsport in general, and he was prepared to put absolutely everything into it. And, there's one thing we know about Paul Bird: A, he wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and B, he didn't he didn't do anything if it wasn't going to be 100%. His bikes were always immaculate, his teams were always at the front, and even whenever it wasn't, he still put everything into it. And this season, it was the perfect showing of that. The two riders, Glenn Irwin and Tommy Bridewell, battling for the championship and getting race wins consistently. It's been an incredible season for them. It's such a shame. It was such a shock to the whole British Superbike paddock, but he's going to be remembered for a long, long time. And one thing's for sure anyway, and that is that the memories and the stories, and certainly the mark that he's left behind in the sport is going to stay forever, because he put his heart and soul into it. And there's one thing you have to give to him is certainly he was a top guy, he always got top riders even if they weren't known about, and he always run a top team.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be surely an emotional final at BSB. They're both the BBM riders at the top of the championship, and obviously they're going to still plough on and press on, one would think, and it's I mean, whichever of the racers, the riders wins it, and we do think it is going to be one of them. It's definitely going to be one of the most emotional moments, I would think, in BSB history. And we'd love to see the team continue. Sure it will. Nothing's been said as of yet, but why wouldn't it? Certainly in his honour, in his memory. Paul Burr, so if you've got any memories yourself and you're tuned in while we're live, then do get them to us on the Superbike Show here on Motorsport Radio. Now, our interview with Michael Hill, as great as that was, we did previously, just before we came on air, and we did say, okay, Michael, we're going to maybe just do like 20-minute, 30-minute with you or something. It kind of overrun by a whole, almost like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
There was a lot to talk about there, wasn't there?
To be fair, yes, there was a whole lot to talk about, which is, and we didn't even talk about absolutely everything in World Superbikes either, because we didn't even talk about, did we, where will Rinaldi go? What's going on with that?
Kind of, the musical chairs have started now, so everything can kind of fall into place now. So we will see if Scott will stay at BMW. We will see where Rinaldi will go. So everything now should just drop into place, but we'll see. But going away, like we haven't even spoke about MotoGP from the weekend either yet.
Well, we were getting on to that as well. The small matter.
Championship leader landed up in hospital or anything. We haven't even touched that yet.
Who predicted that was?
Well, if I remember right, there was a comment made by Sir Lester Forbes. Totally wasn't like a commentator's curse or anything, that said that something is going to happen with Francesco Bagnaia this weekend. And well, if I remember right, something definitely happened with Francesco Bagnaia.
What I said, to clarify, what I said was that generally speaking, when there's like a lot of hype over a rider's definitely going to win this weekend, he's running away with it. He obviously is going to, do the same this weekend and blah, blah, blah. And I got the same feeling that I got in, I think it was 2019 when Marquez was on just an amazing run. And then I can't remember the race where he had a big crack Cota or something like that. It was wherever the hell it was. Anyway, I just thought the same thing, that everyone was of the opinion that, of course, Marquez is going to do so well. Obviously, he's already won the race, doesn't even need to turn up. And sometimes when everyone just sort of piles in with all the hype, you kind of think, well, actually, the more it builds up, the law of averages sort of suggests that, you've done really well up to this point, you're going to have a bad round. And that for Pecco was, this weekend, and I unfortunately called it. And I did say I didn't want him to be injured, and he's not, as far as we know. He has said that he is okay, but riders can lie a little bit.
I can imagine he's going to be there next weekend. I reckon he will be.
He might be there, but the performance, that'll be interesting to see. If he is back 100% performance top, then great. But I just had a real feeling, I think, maybe I'm over-egging this now, but I just thought,
There's no broken bones. Riders will go through the pain barrier.
A minor miracle, really, because, if you saw the crash, that was a real screamer. It was not nice to watch.
It was unlucky, but extremely lucky as well that it wasn't a lot worse, because it could have been a hell of a lot worse than how it did turn out. Well, obviously, first lap crashes, especially when you're leading, are never a good thing. So it turned out a lot. It wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Well, we seem to have a bit of a trend on the Superbike Show here, that we tend to, when we do make bold, big predictions like that, and also I think we managed to call the Jonathan Rea move. We were the first English website to do so. They kind of, just saying, I don't know. It's more luck, to be honest, isn't it? But, but good thing that he isn't injured, as far as we know. Hopefully he's not lying. And
it looked like his teammate has come off actually worse. He's not having a good luck season with injuries this year, is he? As
Bastianini.
Bastianini. He's not having a good year with injuries, because it looks like he is going to be probably out, because I didn't actually see it. Is that from the first corner crash that he caused?
Yeah, it was from the first corner crash that he caused, and he sustained... Well, he's already had surgery on his left ankle and left hand fractures, which was sustained in the Turn 1 crash. And it's also been announced that Bastianini will miss the San Marino Grand Prix, the Indian Grand Prix, and the Japanese Grand Prix after those surgeries. And that was just announced today. So, yeah, he's definitely got off worse. And, well, he did cause it at Turn 1, but still he's had to suffer 2 surgeries from that. And yet again, well, it's even more injuries to add to Bastianini. He's not having the season he would have wanted at all this year. He was really hyped at the start of the season, and we've seen, for example, what he did with the Grassini bike, with a year-old bike. It was all hyped. It was going to be a Ducati showdown. We even spoke about it on the show, thinking that it could have been a Ducati showdown, and there couldn't be walls in the middle of the garage by the end of the year. But it's not turned out like that after his crash at Portimao with Luca Marini, which gave him an injury to a shoulder blade, and now, well, he's going to miss another 3 Grand Prix and yet another whack to his confidence.
Yeah, what did you make of the whole weekend and the racing in MotoGP, Jay?
The MotoGP race, apart from that, well, it wasn't even really part of the race in the end, because obviously they had to stop it, restart it again. It was quite a boring race. It was a bit spread out. The Aprilias obviously seemed to be out because a lot of them were having tyre problems. Like, apparently they were going like 7 seconds a lap slower by the end of the race or something like that. But the Aprilias could manage it a hell of a lot better than the rest. And Vinales and Espargaro, they cleared off pretty much. And it was Aleix who went on and got past Vinales with, I think, about 5 laps to go. And it was a brilliant day for Aprilia, because they also both got on the podium in the sprint race as well. So I think that was Aprilia's first ever double in MotoGP.
Yeah, the first one too.
Yeah, so I think for the Aprilia team, that was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, the race wasn't the most exciting race in the world.
Again, I think I predicted that it would be maybe a bit processional. Just based on, and I was using an analogy in history from Formula One, that races that I've seen in Formula One around there are a bit crap.
We've had good MotoGP races there in the past. The very famous Lorenzo Rossi race was there, so we've had some mega races there in the past.
But I mean, one battle doesn't always mean that every single subsequent race every year from then on in is going to be, an amazing. It wasn't. But anyway, so MotoGP aside, if we can sweep that aside, because I'm just conscious of the time.
We've got to speak about Jake Dixon as well, haven't we, before we go?
The small matter. Go on.
About MotoGP, which it's not been talked about too much, but obviously it may be a slightly boring conversation to bring up, but it's still an important one for later on in the season. Vinales, who got second position, he was also found after the race to be running too low of a front tyre pressure and against the parameters, below the parameters that were set. So his front tyre pressure was below what the rules say it should be as a minimum for over 50% of the race. So Vinales has just been given a warning, but if he does that again, he can start getting time penalties and potentially even disqualifications or ride-throughs in the future.
Weren't they going to get weren't there going to be a big crackdown on stuff like that?
Yeah, well, this is almost the start of the crackdown. It starts with just a warning, so he's just been given a warning at the moment, but if it's discovered for a couple more times this season, he's going to get penalties and time penalties and infringements from that. So Vinales,
don't get caught.
You look at the rules, if you look at the rules, he was technically going against the rules this weekend, but he's just been given a warning for it.
Okay. We'll task you to keep on top of the tyre pressure rules because I fall asleep when I try to follow all that sort of stuff. I really do. But yeah, there was the small matter of the Moto2 race, and Jake Dixon, well, yeah, kind of like a bus, because all of his wins are coming all at once.
We'll forget about the one in between. We'll forget about that.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I wasn't going to mention it. You mentioned it. But yeah, they're still, within reason, all coming roughly at the same time, and long may it continue as well. So clearly still on a high, probably from signing his contracts. Maybe that had nothing to do with it, and he was just having a good race. But yeah, Jake Dixon, fantastic result, Jay.
Yeah, it was pole position and a win. You can't really have a better weekend than that, really. And he kind of rode a nearly perfect race. He dropped back a little bit. I think he dropped to about 4th, 5th, but he was obviously conserving his tyre. And then, yeah, just ploughed his way through with about 5 laps to go. And he did, to be honest with you, come under real heavy attack from Aaron Canet, who you could really see, who's also looking for his first Moto2 win, was really putting a lot of pressure on Jake. But Jake handled it extremely well. And yeah, he rode, that was probably the best I've ever seen Jake Dixon ride. It was nearly, yeah, a perfect race, really. He just handled it all in his stride. Very unlike Jake, what we've seen in the past. We've seen him a lot of times get flustered in this situation. Even that Assen race that he did win, he did make that mistake and he had to fight really hard to get the win. This was just, yeah, spot on performance.
Yeah, it's
perfect.
A lot of people are, some people, okay, some are saying that he really sort of did he's really starting to, I mean, yes, you can do well, I mean, but the British riders tend to have this kind of mentality where, like, you're doing well, you might be winning a race, and maybe you do win it, or you get on the podium and you kind of like, you messed it all up, and we end up talking about, it's so and so and yada yada, the typical sort of British syndrome. But Jake Dixon seemed to sort of push past all that now. He's starting to show that top level consistency that you really need to be considered for MotoGP.
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched the interview before with TNT, not BT anymore. He did it, even though he signed his contract with that Moto2, he wouldn't chuck it out of the window that MotoGP still will not happen next year. Obviously, Digi has been told that he's not got that ride next season, so that space in that team is up for grabs now, and I know there's a few riders after it, one being called Marc Marquez, but it's not over yet. He would have to pay, I think, quite a bit of money to get out of his contract now if he wanted to leave, but that ride I don't think is out the question yet, so yeah, we might still see Jake in MotoGP next year.
I highly doubt it, but he did say, I was looking at a timeline of comments that he said regarding stuff that he said around Silverstone time, and comments I think that were attributed to him at the weekend just gone. And he just an interesting, obviously something's happened negotiation wise, and we know what that is, but it was just interesting to see that he was saying that, yeah, we have options. And then I think he said at the weekend, or just after the weekend, that we never really did have an option to do MotoGP. So there was, just from being a nosy bastard, it's just really interesting to see what went on, what the negotiations were. And, clearly they didn't go MotoGP level because he's not going yet. So, interesting. Lewis, Moto2 for you.
Yeah, well, as you've already said, Jake Dixon, a near perfect ride from him. Pretty much perfect throughout the whole weekend. Incredibly strong pole position as well. And he didn't, as Jay mentioned, he didn't get flustered at all. He was calm, he was consistent, and he bided his time. Sometimes we've seen Jake Dixon try to rush things or try to bridge a gap, maybe in the past not so confident of having the pace late in the race, but exactly this round at this at Catalonia was what he had. He was just had that extra, a little bit of pace at the end and allowed to beat Aaron Canet, which I'm starting to feel sorry for. All he keeps getting is second positions for the past couple of seasons, so Canet's still unable to clinch his first win in Moto2. But Jake Dixon, incredibly strong, and well, MotoGP, I don't think it's 100% out of the question yet, although I think it's still going to be, it's going to be almost near impossible to see it happen. But, well, one can wish at the moment.
Under normal conditions, maybe it's out of the question, but he could be lining up something to say that if a team needs a replacement rider, then he's going to be first pick potentially.
Well, TNT did mention clauses in his contract, and potentially a clause that if a MotoGP contract came up, they would allow him to be released. But we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, incredibly strong ride. Those are the types of ride which gets these big teams looking at you. And I believe in the interview afterwards, in the analysis afterwards, there was a little pat on the back from Alex Marquez as well, adding more fuel to the fire for the rumours. But yeah, Jake Dixon, impressive ride from him. And what we love to see at the front is Brits winning, to be honest. For Sam Lowes, for example, another quiet around 9th position for him. And actually, one rider which definitely will stick my neck in the line. I've been looking at him throughout the whole season, and this weekend was definitely his strongest performance, although he's equalled, I believe, his best finishing position is Manuel Gonzalez. I definitely think he's going to be a future race winner at least, and definitely even end of the season, by the time the end of the season comes starting next year, I see him definitely winning races and consistently being on the podium in Moto2. He's been incredibly consistent all year within the top 10 on that BR46 Master Camp bike, and as well Sergio Garcia's best ride, in my opinion, of the season as well. 4th position from him. He's finally understanding how to ride that Moto2 bike, but everyone else, really, for us being Brits, a little bit biased, completely overshadowed by Jake Dixon, who, well, as you could see by the interview in Parc Fermé, was absolutely buzzing. It was lovely as well for him to give his win and a little dedication to Paul Bird as well.
Yeah, that was nice of him to be thinking of Paul Bird at that moment in time, as we all still will be for many years to come, to be honest. But Jake Dixon, I tend to sort of forget, without looking at a full calendar in front of me, just how many more races there is left to go.
Still a long way to go. I think 9 rounds still left.
Yeah, pretty much half a championship, half a normal championship.
We're putting Jake out. We're putting Jake that he can't do it. He can still do it.
I never said. Nobody said he can't.
Pedro Acosta, the last few rounds, he's all right. He's still been doing well, but he hasn't been consistently winning like he had been earlier in the season. So it's definitely not over yet.
So that answer begs the question, really, doesn't it? Well, what can he do next? Keep winning, and when?
Yeah, well, if he keeps winning, he's going to put the pressure on him to get that ride, isn't he? So the problem is the person who he looks like he's going up against to get that ride is Marc Marquez. So, it's a bit difficult. Same with World Superbikes. In MotoGP at the moment, there are more people trying to get seats than there is rides. Probably harder in MotoGP. Going back to the rumour mill, Pedro Acosta has pretty much said he's not doing another year in Moto2. MotoGP have said they will not put another KTM-based team on the grid. So at the moment, KTM and Gas have got this terrible problem where they've got too many riders and not enough bikes. So I'm feeling a little worried at the moment because the performances haven't been good lately. I'm feeling a bit worried for Jack Miller at the moment. Can they kick him out of his contract? I don't know, but it's looking a bit worrying at the moment because they don't want to lose Pedro Acosta, but they've got to get rid of someone to get Pedro Acosta in MotoGP.
Lewis, thoughts?
That's exactly what Jay said. I mean, Jack Miller he's not had a great season, but also, for example, they do have Paul, which of course got injured at the start of the year and hasn't really had a fair chance to prove himself, to be honest, and has been very impressive since he came back. But we're going to have to wait and see. I did see as well on reported that KTM were considering offering Jack Miller, for example, almost double the salary, and then offer him just some wild cards for next season, just so they can fit in Pedro Acosta. But I don't know how true that is. But yeah, KTM are in a tricky position at the moment, and Pedro Acosta, and actually the whole Moto2 class, they're in a tricky position at the moment because MotoGP, it's so jam-packed talent, and like we've seen with, a rider we've not spoken about just yet, Tony Arbolino. He's had pretty terrible past couple of rounds. Frankly, an awful Catalan Grand Prix, 17th position for him, but he was one of the riders that was tipped for the Grassini seat. But now looking at all the riders in Moto2, obviously we are speaking about Jake Dixon, the potential slim chance that he still could get a ride next year, but the only rider which you could confidently say is going to be on that MotoGP grid next year somehow is going to be Pedro Acosta, but even that is going to be tricky to be able to squeeze him in at all. So yeah, Pedro Acosta, whether he's going to be in the gas KTM, I believe KTM's even tried getting a free bike team on the grid, but that's also
an
been
MV
rejected.
Augusta team.
Yeah, an MV Augusta team, or even do what Repsol Honda did about 10 years ago now with Dove, Casey Stoner and Danny Pedrosa, trying to get them all in one squad, but they've rejected that as well, I believe. So KTM are a really tricky position, and too much talent in their roster at the moment, and certainly if you're a KTM young rider, you're not going to have much hope looking up and seeing more and more talent coming into the KTM squad, and you're hoping also to somehow fit into that.
I think in the test, because they had a test today, didn't they? Moto2,
Pirelli's test.
Yeah, Dennis Onchu rode the Moto2 for the first time today. So he's one that has moved up from Moto3 to Moto2 with a KTM team. So they're pushing him through as quick as possible. But problem is, there's been a bit of a bottleneck at the moment where no one can go anywhere.
Let us know if you've got any particular thoughts on who's going to go where in Moto2 next year and what's going to happen, and is Jake Dixon going to get that MotoGP ride, even though he's already confirmed to be in Moto2 next year? Then let us know. Is there going to be some sort of clause, a get out?
There's probably going to be loads of Honda rides available if anyone wants them.
Fair enough. Any particular thoughts on exactly, maybe not just Jake Dixon, but anyone else as well? If you, are friends with a rider, or, someone who's a mechanic who drives the bus or the lorry or something like that, and there's a hot tip or or whether Jay's been eating pasta with...
It'd be interesting.
With someone...
Imagine if Alberto Puig, right, he's got the phone and he's rang Jake Dixon saying, now, look, Marquez ain't going to be with us next season. Do you want this Honda ride? Would he stay in Moto2, or would you go to that Repsol Honda ride?
Insane?
What would you do?
Well, of course you got a MotoGP.
Really? What, on that bike?
Yeah.
Come last
Absolutely.
3 weeks?
Yeah, but you're in MotoGP, that's the point.
We've seen riders like, for example, those Sam Lowe's make the step up on an uncompetitive bike and then have to almost make the step back down and not even into a Moto2 team at that point. And also in the past, well, actually not even that long ago, Joe Roberts, he got offered the Aprilia ride as well whenever Aprilia was struggling to find riders, and he turned it down and instead stayed in Moto2. So some riders do it, and Sam Lowe's, he took the punt, and he's ended up back in Moto2 and now away off to World Superbikes.
Does it ever work out for people to turn a MotoGP ride down, though, in the long run? I also know a very long time. I don't know how true it was, but when Danny Kemp won the Moto3 championship, he got offered the Pramac Ducati ride, and he turned it down. Okay, I'll take that.
Oh, wow. He would probably be able to tell you yes or no, but I doubt we're ever going to get Danny on the show. So,
Danny's always tuned into this show. Why would he not be? In fact, I was the only one to stick up for him when he came back to BSB, or when he came into BSB. Everyone was slagging him off and having a go at him, and I said that's it.
He's going to be looking for a ride at the moment, isn't he? Because his team has unfortunately folded. So, he's currently looking for a ride at the moment.
Is that definitely what's happened? I don't know.
Looks like it, yeah.
Is that just a rumour? Because I don't know. I've not been paying too much attention. I've just seen the headline that there was a split.
Well,
then I've not heard anything since then.
Could we potentially see Danny Kent going to established BSB team next year? I know we're getting slightly off track, but also throughout the week there was Jack Kennedy parting ways with the Martrain team. Could we potentially see Danny Kent?
I didn't see that. Squad. That's new to me.
Well, that's why we're here to skim over the news and not talk about anything in particular detail.
What, is he left with immediate effect, or is that at the end of the season?
End of the season. Okay. It's mutual agreement.
All mutual, total mutual.
Oh, yeah, it's usually is in these cases.
Yeah, it's paid up till the end of the season. All mutual.
Yeah.
That was me saying that, not. Anyway, so what were we talking about?
Jake Dixon.
Yeah, Jake
he had
Dixon,
the phone call from Honda. Would he stay, or would he go to Honda and finish at the back every meeting?
Is it completely out of the question that Danny Kent has exhausted his opportunities elsewhere outside of BSB?
No, I think Danny Kent will get I think he's proven himself this year that he can get himself a good BSB ride for next year. Possibly maybe in the main Honda team, because he has. Obviously, Charlie's had some good results as well, but the main Honda team, with Andy Irwin being injured, haven't really been near the front all season. So I think maybe they should definitely have a look at Danny for next season.
What about outside of BSB, though? Just maybe I'm being a bit mischievous.
In the World Superbike, Paddock, etc. Or
what, dropping down? Well, I say dropping down, but coming to BSB.
I don't know, just putting it out there. Is there a possibility
the amount of rides there is at the moment, there could be some coming all the way from MotoGP to British Superbike.
Let's not forget, of course, Danny Kent is still the last British rider to win a World Championship.
A Grand Prix World Championship.
Yeah. A proper World Championship. But let's not forget that, of course. So, yeah.
Morbidelli and BSB next season, it could happen at the moment.
Now we just
that's
just
is
silly
that
season
strong
now.
rumour? It's just sounds like a Jamie King rumour.
Yeah.
Morbidelli at OMG next season.
OMG.
Digi as well. He's coming to BSB.
Should we talk about
season.
Moto3? We really don't have much time left. So let's talk about Moto3 then. Lewis, highlights from Moto3.
Well, the highlights being the whole
race,
couple of laps, the whole race, really. Yeah, at one point I think we had 26 riders battling for the race when in the front group anyway. And David Alonso, the Spanish Colombian, as I like to call him, he was raised in Spain. He was born in Spain, but he's racing under a Colombian license. But yes, David Alonso winning the race, and that last lap was, it was pretty crazy. You had David Munoz doing David Munoz things, and you had Dennis Aunchen doing Dennis Aunchen things as well. Dennis Aunchen get the penalty and drop it down to 12th position for last lap shenanigans. But it was great as well to see Jeremy Messia. Of course, we know that he's moving to Moto2 next season and away from Moto3 finally, but back on the podium after 2 DNFs, I believe, in a row as well, and Rueda. But Sasaki's another one of the riders, finishing in 4th place in Moto3 that you could potentially see move up to Moto2 in coming years. But yeah, Moto3, it's highlight of the weekend, but apart from Jake Dixon's win. But actual racing-wise, it was exactly what we expect from a Moto3 race. Moto3, actually, we talk about Catalonia sometimes being a bit more of a stale track. I mean, you don't necessarily think of recent classics, apart from obviously if we ought to go all the way back to 2009, etc. Then we can see some great racing. But Moto3, it's always impressive in Catalonia, and once again, it showed to be the case, and it was a battle at the front for the ages anyway.
Fair enough. Jay, your thoughts on the Moto3 race at the weekend?
Yeah, I watched it like 10 minutes before we came on show. So yeah, it was a Moto3 race, wasn't it? It was just like, everyone just had their axes out and they were just going absolutely mental at each other. Yeah, lunatics. I mean, that's what normally Moto3 racing. I think, obviously the age of the people who are doing it and things like, it's the best race in the world, isn't it? You don't get better racing than Moto3. I mean, most of the time I've got my hands over my eyes because it is just so close and so wild. I mean, yeah, it is from four wheels, dirt, tarmac, anything. It is the best racing in the world, Moto3. If you can't get excited by that, it is... You can't get excited by anything. It's nuts.
I thought it was going to be this weekend's Pit Bike 140 race at Fab Racing, streamed live here on Motorsport Radio.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be exciting, aren't in it? I mean, I'm in it for one, so it's going to be exciting. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Probably come in second place again. I'm getting a bit used to that. I am now the Aaron Canet of Pit Bike racing at the moment. I'm going to get some neck tattoos all the way around here.
Ooh. Anyway, so
Sonic tattoos.
Yeah, I'm going to get Sonic around my neck.
You need to sort that hair out and dye it blue again. Although last time you did that, it went grey.
Blue was COVID. It's not COVID anymore.
You need the Sonic Barnet. That's what you need. So anyway, yeah.
I'm going to bring a paddling pool to Wilton because it's meant to be well hot this weekend. So the old paddling.
I remember the last time I brought a paddling pool.
Yeah. We brought that to Red Lodge when it was the COVID year, and literally that paddling pool, by the end of the weekend, the amount of people that put their hats and shirts in there, that was a COVID pool, that was.
Stay safe, kids.
That was COVID in a rubber pool, that was. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to bring my swimming shorts, I'm going to lay in the paddling pool, and I want you to come in.
I saw the picture last time you did that, and it had to be, anyway, pixelated.
Yeah, I'll have my shades on, I'm going to have a colourful hat on, and you lot can come interview me while I'm sitting in the pool.
I think just because you do that, I think that's why we won't interview you, I think.
Oh, come on, let's think of the viewers you'll get from it.
Yeah, it'll go right down.
The drop, yeah.
But yeah, we will be live streaming the Road to MotoGP Championship Fab Racing, where all the future world champions, BSB champions, MotoGP riders, and current BSB champions all raced.
Yeah, current BSB championship.
Yeah, the current actual champion. Yeah. And even Danny Kent, the last British GP world champion as well. I think he was in Fab. I'm sure he was. I'm going to say he was.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
There you go. Before my time, but he was. Anyway, so that'll be live all this weekend. 2 days of live race coverage here on Motorsport Radio. Lewis Ray commentating and Jay crashing, winning or finishing second. And
I'm going to get that win this weekend. I'm going to do it.
Well, you need to, because
no, it's been too long.
I'm sure you've been keeping like a celebration hid under your hat,
don't worry.
Your sleeve.
Oh, you should wait to see what me and Chris have got planned at the last round of Three Sisters.
Good.
Okay, well,
it's going to be entertaining. It may even be a bit confusing for you, but you'll love it.
I'm sure it will be confusing, yes. But anyway, before we go, there was some other racing, as good as MotoGP 2 and 3 were at the weekend. There was some other epic, titanic battles happening at the weekend at Knockhill and the Scottish Championship, and Lewis Ray was racing and competing, and you almost beat Scott McPhee, I think, in race one.
Almost.
Didn't you? I think if he was like 15 seconds slower down the road and you were 15 seconds quicker up the road, you would have finished. Did he have a technical problem or something? I'm going to say no, but...
Oh, no.
Was you going the correct way round this time?
Yes, the correct way around, which is why I stayed on the whole weekend, which makes a change as well. I only took one trip in the gravel and morning warm up, but I didn't crash. So fine, who cares? But yeah, almost bet Scott McPhee. I'm going to put that on my resume as well. I mean, I think I was one place behind in the end.
Well, wasn't he like 15th and you were 16th or something like that?
Whoa! I think it was more like 14th, 13th actually. Anyway, I would have been starting sixth, I think, for the final race of the weekend, but sadly that was cancelled due to some incidents that happened throughout the weekend. But it was surprisingly good weather conditions throughout the whole weekend. Sunny actually, but I actually got some sunburn as well. I think it was more from the wind that I didn't realise I was getting burned. But yeah, now that was technically my last round, probably most likely my last round, at least full round of racing, full season of racing that I'll ever do. So now, I can officially, yeah.
Can you bring your levers to Wilton and you can have a go on a pit bike on Friday?
No, because we need him for Three Sisters for the final round. So, and plus, I'm not quite insured for commentators crashing. And
all right, can he bring it to Three Sisters? Because if he hurts himself there, it don't matter, does it? Because the end of the season.
Yeah, that's true. Sign him off there.
Bring your levers to Three Sisters.
Yeah, I'll bring my levers to Three Sisters, and then we can.
I'll bring a bike for you.
Well, I did put it to all the previous commentators that maybe we should meet up during that weekend, because the final round, if you're not aware, of Fab Racing happens on a Friday and Saturday in about a month's time at Three Sisters in Wigan in Manchester. And we've had a Monday race at the start of the year, which was weird as hell. And we're going to end on the Saturday, and then we're going to all get kicked out of the paddock and go to the pub for a big piss-up on a Saturday night in Wigan.
Have you spoke to Roger or Rob about this?
Well, that's just what's going to happen, isn't it? We're all getting kicked out of the paddock, and we're just going to all end up in the pub.
The Birkins have, there you go. It's the Birkins organising this, so you can tell what it's going to
Shambles.
be like. It's going to be, we're planning a massive night out on Saturday night, so you're all welcome to come.
Oh, nice. Cool. Just tell us where it is.
Yeah, well, with the Birkins, I don't know if it'd be the best place in the world, but hey, it'd be entertaining.
Well, anyway, lots of fab fallout to report from not just this weekend at Wilton Mill, but the final round just weeks away. And there's a couple of champions to be crowned this weekend, Lewis.
Championships still to be crowned. Actually, we've seen some champions already crowned. One of them being Josh Birkin in the senior mini motor class, and also in the LC40 elite class of Byron Johnson. 2 rounds still remain, 6 races left of the year, and they're as close as ever. The LS2 Helmets Mini GP70 British Championship, that is still completely up for grabs. That's less than 5 points, if I remember correctly, going into this round. So it's incredibly close. And that looks like it's going to go down to the wire. So it's exciting as ever. And this weekend, I've had a look at the weather forecast because I couldn't actually believe, Jamie, that it could be paddling pool weather. But it's almost going to be, if not over, 30 degrees this weekend. So it's going to be blooming hot for us anyway in the commentary box and everyone in the levers. So the paddling pools are definitely going to be out. And it should be a great weekend at Wilton Mill, which, like always, has some great facilities.
Yes, including the loan of a big air conditioner to us. That facility. I've not spoken to
Was
them
it
about
a
that.
mess?
Yeah, well, I do have an air conditioner actually, but it's here and I can't fit it in my car now, so whatever. But anyway, yes, Fab Racing this weekend live on Motorsport Radio. Every single race will be live, and for those who know, I'm just about to upload round 3. That's all I'll say. Except I will also say that we wish Brandon Russell all the very best in his recovery. He had a massive crash at Knockhill at the weekend. His mum giving us some updates, or a close relative at least, giving us some updates to say that he's on the road to recovery. And I believe, Lewis, that was the reason why you didn't get your 3rd race at Knockhill at the weekend. That's Brandon Russell, occasional or full-time. Is he junior super sports racer or?
No, he's he wildcarded this year at Knockhill in junior super sport. Full-time Scottish Championship, and both in my class in the 650 Super Twin Championship, and he also does occasionally anyway the pre-injection 600 Championship. He's the reigning 300 champion up here in Scotland as well, which he rode at BSB this year. I was speaking to him literally on the Saturday, and we were speaking about his plans for next season. Potentially, he was thinking about that it could be a BSB opportunity somewhere, that we could see him in the BSB paddock in a couple of classes, or he could be staying in Scotland, all depending on budget. But one of the nicest riders, one of the fastest riders that we have coming from Scotland at the moment. So yeah, obviously we wish him the best of recovery. And yeah, I'll definitely be keeping updated and trying to speak to whoever I can anyway to find out how he's doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that as well. So all the very best to Brandon, and more thoughts and a lot of love going out to his family and friends, Brandon. And it'll be good to see if he can actually pull off a full-time ride next year in BSB once he's stitched himself back together. So, Jay, thank you very much for coming on tonight. Thank you also to Michael Hill, and we well dominated his time, although by the sounds of it I don't think he minded, to be honest. No. So it was always nice to catch up with World Superbike Paddock Show Co-ordinator and presenter and host, and many other things as well. Even just reading out his CV, that'll take the full show up. But yeah, Michael Hill, very generous with his time, and one of the nicest people you can also meet in the paddock as well. So yeah, thank you for coming on for a good hour and 15 minutes or something like that. And yeah, tune in this weekend live to Fab Racing on Motorsport Radio, where you'll hear live race coverage from Lewis Ray, and I'll be switching all the old cameras. So I'll be the Richard Coventry of Fab Racing. That's the BSB director, by the way. So yeah, you won't find any dodgy camera cuts this week. Although I've just said that now, it'll be a shambles, won't it? But anyway,
I know what we're talking about now.
Good. It's only been 2 hours. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Tune in also to the Motorsport Radio Breakfast Show, Monday to Friday, 6 till 9 a.m. Myself and Kiko Giles on the mic, talking about, well, motorsport. Actually, it's the world's only permanent motorsport breakfast radio show, and it's here on Motorsport Radio. And a final word to, once again, to the memory and the life of Paul Bird, a iconic, massive figure, colourful character, who dominated BSB most recently with championships and riders who he'd given opportunities to, and also made his name in rallying as well, and many other disciplines in motorsport, and also road racing as well, who tragically lost his life following an illness, a short illness, just before the weekend. Paul Bird, who passed away on Friday. This is Motorsport Radio. Thank you for listening.